Welcome to our Buy the Book YouTube channel. It's an absolute pleasure today to have Patricia Gibney join me, all the way from Mullingar. And Patricia is a best-selling author who's had phenomenal success in such a short period of time. So welcome to the interview, Patricia. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm delighted to join you here today.
So you might, Patricia, just start by giving us a bit of an overview, I guess, of the past 5 years, I think, where you've had this phenomenal success, and maybe let us know some of the books that you've written.
Well, just this month, in 16th of March, 5 years ago, my debut novel, The Missing Ones, was published. It had taken me 5 years to write that book, but it was a success almost immediately. I was more astounded than anybody. I couldn't believe it, because I think it sold 100,000 copies in the first month, and it's still been downloaded by people, because I was initially published as a digital only author through Bookouture in London, and I had signed a contract for 2 books, to write 2 books a year, which was fairly daunting because I had taken 5 years to write the first book, so 2 books a year. But at the time I was up for the challenge. So in those 5 years I've had 10 books published in the Detective Lottie Parker series, and just this week it was announced that I've sold 2 million books in that 5 years. So that includes audio and paperbacks as well. So I think I'm more surprised than anybody.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so you were saying like what books. It is a series, so it's a detective series, and the first one is The Missing Ones, and the most recent paperback that's been published, because I'm now published in paperback, was Buried Angels, which was book 8 in the series. But there's actually 10 books out, because Little Bones was published last September, and I've just finished book 11, which will be out in June, and that's called The Guilty Girl.
And is that the series finished at 11?
No, I have 3 more books on my current contract and in negotiations to write more.
Wow. Okay. So there's no end in sight as of yet.
I'm not going to kill off Lottie yet. No.
That's great to hear. And I'm interested when you said there that you started as a digital, or your first book was digital. What does that mean, or how did that come about?
Well, I had set a goal for myself. I'd gone through a fairly, I think a lot of people know my backstory, but I'd gone through a fairly bad time in my life when my husband died in 2009, after just 3 months after being diagnosed with cancer. And I hit this really dark period in my life, which I now know was grief. At the time, I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I had to give up my job and try and raise our 3 children, and they were young teenagers at the time. So life was fairly, what would you say? I was kind of on autopilot until I actually crashed, and I literally couldn't do anything. But I found my way back through this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And to me, it's my Bible, and I often dip in and dip out of it. And one of the things that she talked about was writing the morning pages, which is now we call journaling. And I found that really therapeutic. And I wasn't able to use the business side of my head, or I worked in administration, and I couldn't do any of that anymore. And so I was kind of challenging the creative side of my brain. And I did self-publish a little children's book called Spring Sprang Sally. I did the drawings and whatever, but I couldn't do the business side of it. So I'm really in awe of self-published authors who can, keep the whole thing on the road, because I just couldn't do that. And from my morning pages, I developed the character of Lottie. So I'd fed into this character a lot of the emotion that I had gone through after Aidan had died. And so, because Lottie is a widow with 3 teenage children, so there's parallels there. But it was mainly the emotion and how she was struggling that I was able to get into her character. So I started setting myself small goals. It was the only thing kind of to keep me focused from day to day. Read, write, and keep at it. And because I had failed with the self-publishing, I decided I wanted to go down the traditional publishing route. And to do that, I needed a highly polished manuscript, and I needed an agent. So I started doing writing courses, and that was really good because I met like-minded people. and felt I wasn't on my own, and you were able to share snippets of what you were writing and get feedback. So that was really good. So I had met Louise Phillips, who's another Irish crime writer, on a course called, it was Writing Crime Fiction. She was given the course, and her agent was Ger Nicholl from the Book Bureau. So I sent my book when I had it, got a manuscript appraisal and did all the edits, and 5 years later I just sent it off to Ger, and she actually took me on. So that was in January 2016. And then the book started going out on submission, and then the rejection started coming back. So I was devastated. I was, oh my God, you know, and I've set myself all these goals, and I've got to this stage, and I have my agent and I have my manuscript, and nobody's going to publish it. But then Bookouture, who are a London-based digital publisher, came back to us and asked had I anything else with Lottie Parker in it. And I had started the second book, because I felt she was a strong enough character to withstand at least 2 books. And so I had started book 2. And so I sent them off the synopsis of that, and they came back offering me a contract for 4 books in the series, and 2 books, and that was 2 books a year. So I had 1.5 written, and so therefore I had all this other work to do. So basically being digital, I didn't really know anything about it. I read paperbacks and I read from my Kindle. I find the Kindle handy for holidays because I don't have to be packing up the suitcase with like 14 books for the 14 days away. So I can just load up my Kindle, but I do love a paperback as well. So that was really all I knew about digital publishing. So then I said, yeah, sure, look, we'll go for it. And Ger advised, yeah, we'll go with it, because they already had 2 authors who had sold over 1 million books. And there were only 3 years in existence when I joined them. I think now they have over 50 million books sold. So I said, yeah, this is grand. I'd be able to write the books, but I didn't realize all the editing that goes into it. You know, once you're in the process and you have your editor, and it's like another 4 months after you write the book, you have to do all this editing. And I was trying to write the next book and trying to edit, and oh my God, I was tearing my hair out. I didn't know. I said, what am I after signing up for? But once the missing ones came out, and it was like, I just couldn't believe how successful it was and the feedback I got on it. And it kind of gave me a boost. You know, I said, well, maybe I'm doing something right. And then they brought it out in audio, and the audio I have, she's Michelle Moran is the narrator, and she's lived in London for the last 25-30 years, but she's actually from County Meath down the road. And so the audiobooks are really successful. And then a few years ago, I think about 3 years ago, Bookouture were taken over by Hachette UK. And that's how now I'm published in paperback, as well as the ebook and the audiobook.
Okay. Wow, what a fascinating story. Like, well, first of all, congratulations, but also condolences on your loss. That's quite sad that happened. You might take us back to that time and just tell us a bit.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's 13 years ago in May, this May coming, that Aidan has died. And some days I feel like those 13 years were a really long time. And sometimes I feel like it was yesterday. It's very hard to describe. I've been going out with Aidan since I was 14. I was married the day before my 21st birthday. We had 3 children, Aisling, Orla and Cathal. And he was like, he'd been in Kosovo twice. He was in Lebanon 2 or 3 times. He had just come back from Chad. He'd gone out as what do you call it, logistical, you know, before the main troops would go out, he could, you know, to look at, he was in transport to make sure they could get all the equipment across roads and all of that. And he had just come back the previous year from that. And then he, that Christmas, he was complaining of a pain in his leg, and we found out then he ended up in hospital in the January, and it was a clot in his leg. And because he was only 49 and he was fit and he was a soldier and in medicals every year, the doctors here in Mullingar kept investigating to see, you know, like, why would he have a clot in his leg, you know, being so fit, or what caused it? And then they discovered that he had this cholangiocarcinoma, it's called, this cancer, and it was already in another organ. It was already in his liver. It starts in the bile duct, and it was already in his liver when it was discovered. So like we went through the chemo, and that nearly killed him. Chemo was nearly worse. So I mean, I'm in awe of the likes of Vicky Phelan, who is such an inspiration to everybody, and the journey that she's gone through. But our journey was very short, because Aidan died in 31st of May 2009. So it was like, it was like suddenly the rock that held the whole family together was gone, and for ages, like, I'd be waiting for the key to turn in the door. Like, as I said, I was used to him being away for 6 months, but when 6 months was over, there was still no key turning in the lock in the door. And the kids were brilliant. The two girls did their Leaving Cert and Junior Cert the day after Aidan's funeral. They started their exams, and then Cottle was in first year. So they've come through hell and back, but they've been so strong and kind of kept me going all the time, and are really supportive. My job suffered because I was suffering, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So it was a fairly bleak time, but in a long kind of roundabout way, it has brought me to where I am today. You don't know what twists and turns are on the journey of life, or what's going to, you might have everything planned out, but then suddenly an obstacle comes in the road, and you just have to either go over it, go under it, go around it, or whatever, and you find a new path. And that's basically what I have done.
Yeah, I know. God, it's such a sad story in some ways, but you mentioned Vicky being an inspiration. I mean, I could easily say you're such an inspiration for kind of coming through that with 3 younger children, and essentially kind of still challenging your energies into something, and something sort of positive, in such a short period of time. You mentioned a book that you got, The Artist's Way. And how did you come across that book, out of interest?
I actually had the book in my bookcase, so I don't know when I bought it. Okay. I think I got it sometime back in the 90s, but I have no recollection of why I had it. I don't even think I'd ever opened it, but it must have been something I picked up somewhere. But it was like a divine intervention or something. Just one day, I just went to the bookcase and picked it out. And I actually follow Julia Cameron's journey now. She's another book coming out, and she brought out a workbook alongside The Artist's Way, which I never got, but I just found it was very personal. And the whole thing of writing down your feelings in the morning before you get out of bed, with a paper and a pen, not a laptop or an iPad or any of that. It's just the pen and the paper. And it was so therapeutic to write down and give out and get all the anger out of you, and things that you were feeling, or things you had to do that day. And you get out of bed feeling like there's a weight lifted off you. And another thing she had in the book was treating yourself, have me days. And I've just come across that recently in so many journals, these journals that, I mean, I have 3 or 4 of them on the go now. I'm addicted to them, and it's all about like treat yourself and don't feel guilty about it, and write down your set your goals for the month, and then every day, have you achieved them, have you not, without any pressure on yourself, but it just kind of gives you a focus. And I found when I was writing, then when I started writing the book, and then when I started getting deadlines, it gave me something to work towards. So therefore, when I got up out of bed in the morning, I knew what I was going to do. At least I had something to fill 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that was the start of it.
Yeah. And was there a particular reason you went towards crime? Did that come naturally for you, or was it just they were the books you liked to read?
I love reading crime. I love a mystery. I love a good mystery. I love trying to figure it out before I get to the end of the book. And I've always read, like, from the Nancy Drews way back. Everything I read there was a mystery at the heart of it. And I love detectives. I love crime series. But I do read, I don't solely read crime fiction. I just love a good story, and a good story that's told well. But my first love of reading would be crime books, definitely.
And where do you get your ideas from?
Oh God, I don't know. I must have a warped brain somewhere, a dark part of my brain. I suppose, like, a lot of it is like real life. something you might read in the paper or come across on a Netflix series or something that you can, it gives you the kernel of an idea. I find my books are character led, so I love creating new characters. Come up with a crime and then let them lead the investigation, lead the story. The crime might actually change as I'm writing it, the characters develop, and I'll say, well, that guy wouldn't, he's not a character that would actually do A, B, or C, have to change the crime. So I just love creating the characters, coming up with like a small kernel of an idea, and then just letting it flow. And I don't write to a plan. I don't plot my books out from start to finish. I think one of the things of writing crime or writing a series is that I have ready-made characters, like Lottie and her team and Lottie's family, the obstacles and the challenges that she has in her personal life. Those things carry forward from book to book. So even while I'm waiting for an idea to come for the crime as such, I'm never stuck to start, because at least I can start with Lottie and Boyd, or Lottie and her family, or Lottie having a row with her mother or something, So, and once I start writing, then I can develop the story. And I do a lot of brainstorming with my editor as well, with ideas, so that I'm not halfway through it and she'll say, well, that's not going to work, So at least that's something we've developed over about the last 3 or 4 books. And it cuts down then on the editing process as well.
I was going to ask you about the editing. How have you gotten used to it now?
I suppose I am, yeah. But at the beginning, it was all so new to me. I didn't expect it. Like I submit my manuscript to my editor, Lydia, and she's brilliant. And then she comes back with they call it structural edits. So it's like, this is not working, or that's not working. And you might have to change one tiny thing, but it has to be tracked the whole way through the manuscript. And by changing one little thing, it can just put everything out of sync. It can put your timelines out. So that's a big job. You have about a month to do that. So that's a fairly big job. Then that's sent back, and the next phase is line edits. So that's where she goes through the book line by line and tells you what's working, what's not working, and you fix all that up. Then it's sent out to a copy editor. So they use, I suppose you would say, freelance copy editors. And I'm really lucky. I've had the same copy editor for all of my books. Jane Shelley, I think is her name. I can't think of it now. And she's brilliant. And she kind of gets me. And like, my publishers are UK based, and say Irish turns of phrase, and that would be different from turns of phrase that you'd have in the UK. So now she gets it. And so the copy editor is looking at every single word, everything in the document. So another 2 or 3 weeks for that. And then I have 3 rounds of proofreading, which is they send it out to a proofreader, and then it's sent back to me. So I accept or whatever, reject the suggestions. And then because I'm digitally published, I have to proof an ebook version and a paperback version. So and you only have about 5 days to do that. So I have my sister Marie now on board. So she takes, say, the paperback version, and I'll take the ebook version, and we'll go through it, write out whatever needs to be changed, and then we have to cross-reference. I did the first few books on my own with the 2 of them. I ended up with shingles after one of the books because I was so stressed over it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was before I kind of
full on.
found my own voice to kind of say, I can't do this in 5 days. I can't do 2 document proofreads in 5 days, And then when I said that, and I got Marie on board with me, so that has halved the work. And I think the fact you have to proofread, because in the typesetting or when they're setting up the books, they're set up differently, and things can be lost from the document. I don't know. I'm not technically brained at all, so that's why I have to do that. And then it's ready to go out in the world.
Wow, it sounds busy.
It is. It's hard work, but I was never afraid of hard work, and I think hard work kind of keeps the brain ticking over as well. But it is busy, but I like being busy. It fits the days for me.
And then on the promotion side, how do you find that?
With the ebooks, I'm mainly talking about Bookouture, and they have PR and marketing kind of people working with them, and it's nearly all online stuff. I find that so draining. I don't know how people stay on Twitter and Facebook all day for their jobs or whatever, because it is constant online, and doing stuff for online journals and blog tours. They set up blog tours where your book is sent out to the book reviewers and bloggers, who are brilliant, and they do all that in their own time. So you're kind of keeping on top of all of that. With the paperbacks, then I had a lot of kind of PR stuff with the missing ones when it came out first, because it sold 100,000 copies in a month, and that was kind of a big thing. I didn't know it was a big thing, because I didn't know how many books you could sell or whatever. And I got some TV interviews and did a lot of newspaper interviews and that. And I just found all that was cutting into my writing time. But now I kind of can balance. I know what's down the line. A lot of the PR, I write the articles. If newspaper would say, will you, what would you like to write about? Or will you write about, I did a piece for The Independent on travel during the lockdown. Because the only place we could go was up to Sligo, down to Kerry. And once we could go further than your 5 kilometres. And yeah, I just find that really interesting. And it's, writing about something different. Writing an article about travel isn't writing about crime,
Yeah.
So there's a lot involved in it, but I'm beginning to get used to it. It's taken me 5 years, but I'm beginning to get used to it.
And yeah, because I mean, it seems like a lot to do with it. So it's 2 books a year. So at any time, you're either writing, you're editing, or you're promoting, and you could be doing that on 2 different books at any given time.
That was the case up to last year, I think, and then I just felt myself. I just felt I wasn't able for it. I just felt I was totally drained. I was afraid I was going to get burnt out. So with my agent, we talked to my editor and to Jenny in Bookouture, and the last contract I signed was for 1 book a year.
Okay.
So that was like such a weight off me. But I also felt kind of disappointed, because I said, I want to write 2 books a year, but I'm not able to write 2 books a year. But once the pressure was off, I'm actually submitting the books, ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm nearly 1 book ahead of schedule now. So I think I'm writing a book every 9 months. So it's like having a baby. But it has taken all the pressure off of, as you say, you're writing one and editing another. And so now I have just copy edits to do on the book that's coming out in June. And just today I actually started writing book 12.
Book
just
12.
to get it. Yeah. And like last year I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose with lockdown as well, I'm not on the go as much. I'm home more, probably even more relaxed in myself. So I think mentally I'm probably rested. So I just find for a while it was nearly the thoughts of writing 2 books a year was worse than actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And once that pressure was taken off, I just felt, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, it sounds incredible how much you've kind of crammed into 5 years. But you said, I mean, I might go back to when you said it took you 5 years to kind of get to the first book. So what was that process like over that 5 years? I think I read somewhere, would you have done some creative writing courses as well?
Yeah, I was about halfway into the book. I didn't know how long a book should be or how many words or whatever. I hadn't a clue. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to write this book. And I'd say I was probably at about 50,000 words, and I had no idea was it any good. Could I write it or whatever? So I joined the Irish Writers Centre in Dublin. I said I need to do a few courses just to kind of, see, is this the way you do it, or is there a right way or a wrong way? Which there isn't, but there isn't a wrong way, you just do it. But it was great because I found you were meeting like-minded people. And I mainly did crime writing courses, so we were kind of all in the same boat. But I did do one of Conor Costick's Finish That Novel course. Actually, I did that course twice because I just found it great. And you had people were writing all different things, weren't all writing crime, and that was really interesting. And I've made like great friends. Like I just found it socially, and it was great for networking. And I've made a few brilliant friends out of going to the courses. And then it got me out of the town. you know, because I had to go to Dublin to do them. So I'd have to get in my car on a Thursday evening and drive up to Dublin, get over my fear of car parks and head off into the writer's centre. And I just found it was brilliant socially. If I was never to write a word, I would say the writing courses really, really helped me personally. From that, then I realized I did a book, I call it a boot camp. I did a week-long course with Arlene Hunt, and that was just phenomenal. Like, she just came in with such energy, and it really positive and brilliant feedback. And I found that really good. So I would advise anybody starting out, definitely do the courses. You might think they're not for you, but you will meet people who are writing as well, because writing is solitary. You know, when you're actually writing your first draft, there's nobody kind of looking over your shoulder to say that's right or that's wrong, or, you know, you're doing great, or to give you a pat on the back or anything, you know. So if you can get out of that little zone, if it's only once a week or once a month, and meet other people who are doing the same thing as you, you won't feel, you know, that you're a little bit insane or whatever, that, you know, okay, there's other people doing this as well as me. Yeah, so when I had it I thought I had it fairly well done. I wanted to get the agent. I decided I would get what was called a manuscript appraisal. So I sent to somebody I had met on a course, and was told it won't be sugar-coated. I said, no, I don't want it sugar-coated. I want the truth. So I got back the truth, about 15 pages. So I had a huge job of work to do, and I had too many characters. I had to take out a character. At the beginning, I was totally, oh no, I'm not doing this. Like, you know, I don't want to change this. But then when I kind of sat back and thought about it, yeah, I definitely needed to do this work on the manuscript. So I think it took me nearly another year working on it to get it to where I was able to send it out. Wow. So it was a process. Like, and I was learning all the time. I'm still learning. You know, it's not something that you can say, I have that now, you know, or that there's a diagram I can follow and I'd be able to, no, every single book, every time I sit down at a laptop, I'm learning something new.
It seems to me that that's part of the reason why you're successful, is because from the very start, you were open to that feedback. You didn't take it personally, and you were willing to put the work in.
Yeah. Well, I did take it personally when I got the appraisal, because I think I cried. But then when I looked at it objectively, and, you know, I have to learn that, like, even with the editing with my editor now, Lydia might say something to me and I just say, well, it took me 2 weeks to write that, you know, and then I have to say, no, they're the professionals, they know what works, you know. But you do have to kind of distance yourself a little bit. You have to kind of, especially if you're going to send it out into the public domain, you have to let go. So I've raised this child for 9 months, or I've been pregnant for 9 months with this book, and now it has to be born and it's going out there. And people are going to be critical of it. There's going to be reviews, there's going to be good ones, bad ones. It is difficult when people criticize your work, but I had to get into my head, well, my books are not for everyone. You know, there will be people who pick it up and say, well, I can't read that, or this is wrong, or whatever they're going to say. And I can't take that personally, because everybody's opinion is different. And everybody reading the books are going to get, you know, no two people are going to get the same thing out of the book. So I have to put a little barrier there once it's out there in the world. And I think that's good of being able to, when that's out, start the next one. So I'm focused on writing the next one, and I'm not going to get too hung up about the feedback on the other one. I enjoy the good feedback, and then the rest of it, it's part and parcel of being published.
And what's your feeling on why it was so successful so early on? Do you think it was the character people connected with? Do you think it was the story?
It's I think the fact that I was published digitally is it was immediately out globally.
Okay.
So it was in English language globally, because ebooks are available all over the world. The storyline I had drawn kind of on our own dark past in the more recent history, around the mother and baby homes, fictionalized, it's all fiction, but drawn on things I would have read, things I would have heard. some reports had come out about abuse in institutions and that. So I think it was topical, because before I was to do my final edits, the Tuam Babies scandal broke.
Okay.
So it was very topical at the time. And not just in Ireland, in the United States and Australia, because the book did really well in both of those places. And from people contacting me, I know how it kind of touched a nerve with people. So the storyline would have been one thing. I think the character of Lottie, a lot of people could relate to her. I think people could say, well, that could be me. I fed a lot of the emotion that I was going through at the time. And I think that might have made the character more real, you know, and relatable. And probably that's why she can stand up in a series. Like, she's flawed, as all these detectives are flawed, but she was a mother, she was a widow, she was a mother, she had her mother who she didn't get on with, she had Boyd, her sidekick, as they call them in crime novels. She had an array of colleagues, like you'd have in any office, and some got on and some didn't. So there was a lot of things in the book that people could relate to. And I think that might have helped it. And I think the fact that there was a good mystery story in the mix as well.
Yeah, it was a combination of things.
Yeah, it's not just one thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we touched on some of it, but I'd like to go back and ask you on advice for other authors who are starting out. And I think I said to you earlier, it's one of the main reasons I love these interviews, just to get some insights from those that have gone ahead. 5 years, I suppose, with 10 books, but in total 10 years, of experience is phenomenal. So over that 10 years, what would be the one or two kind of key pieces of advice for some of us that are in the early stages of writing books?
I think one thing, and I think Stephen King said it as well, is to read. I think that's really important. I am an avid reader. I read every single night. If I'm going anywhere, if I'm going to a dentist or a doctor, I have my Kindle or a book in my bag. I just can't be without a book. I love reading. I think you have to be a reader first before you can be a writer. That's my personal opinion. I would say write every day. If you can't write every day, have a schedule. You'll write at the weekends, or you'll write at night, you'll write in the morning before the kids get up or whatever. But I do think it's important to keep it fresh. If you're writing, to keep the ideas fresh. Always have a notebook and a pen in your bag, or the notes app on your phone, because you never know when an idea is going to strike. I was out for a walk one day and I had my phone, and I don't think I had a notes app at the time, but I actually recorded what I was thinking onto the phone, as if anyone saw me out walking. And I think when you're writing every day as well, you're keeping it fresh. Your mind is in that zone. But as I say, that mightn't suit everybody. So set a time at weekends or whatever, and give yourself a goal. Set a goal. By the end of this month, I'll have a chapter written, or I'll have 3 chapters. You mightn't reach it, but if you do, then you set a new goal for the next month. I think it's really important. And I find that with deadlines as well. At the beginning, I hated deadlines, but now I work to a deadline, and it gives me, the focus. And I have a schedule of when, the book has to be submitted. I have a schedule of when all the edits are coming. And I find that really, really works for me.
Yeah.
So I suppose an advice would be read as much as you can, read widely, write as often as you can, and set yourself goals.
And do you, out of interest, do you ever show your work to other people outside of your editor and your team?
Before it's published? The only person who would read it would be my sister, Marie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that helpful?
It is helpful because you're getting fresh eyes on it. You're getting eyes from somebody who's a reader, an editor, or an agent, or whatever. So she would be the only one that would read it. And I find it, like, she would be honest, and say, this doesn't work. And she's a teacher. She's retired now, but she was a teacher of primary school. And in a book, which book was it? the last book, Little Bones, there was a child in it. The child was about 5. And she was able to, now I have 4 grandchildren now, but coming from the teacher's viewpoint, she was able to say, well, that child wouldn't use that word, or that sounds like an adult, not a child. So that type of input is really, really valuable. And it's going to get a different set of eyes on the book. But I wouldn't be sending it out to my friends or anybody else to read. And I think if you get too many opinions as well, it can kind of colour it, and it kind of, you know, are you writing the book that you want to write?
Yeah.
You know, if you have too many opinions on it. So a select few, I would say.
Yeah. And you've stayed with the same publisher the whole time?
I am with Bookouture, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Hachette Ireland published paperbacks in Ireland. So Buried Angels, which is book 8 in the series, that just came out there in February, through Hachette, and Sphere UK, who are part of Hachette UK. I don't understand all this, but so that Buried Angels will come out as well in the UK in the summer, in June.
And how important is it for you to go to the bookstores to, I suppose, meet the local bookstore owners, to do book signings, to meet your readers? How much does that play in your, I suppose, everyday life?
Yeah, I enjoy it. And like before I was published, you know, I had this idea that I wanted to be able to walk into Just Books in Mullingar or Easton's and see my book on the shelf. But when it came out digitally, you know, I just thought this is phenomenal. Like, I think when I hit 80,000 copies sold of The Missing Ones, I love football. I was actually watching Barcelona on the television, and your man said, the new camp has 80,000 people, whatever, 84,000. I said, God, imagine every one of them reading my book, you know, and it's, oh my God. But I still kind of, in the back of my mind, wanted to see my book on the bookshelf in Mullingar or in Dublin or wherever. And then when it did come out, I can't remember when, it must be 3 years ago, when the first one came out, in 3 or 4 years ago, in paperback. And I had to go up to Dublin and go around all the book shops and meet the booksellers. And it was brilliant, like to be, you know, signing your books and talking to these people who are going to be there selling your book. And then I have a great relationship here locally with the bookshops here. I'm always in and out buying books, and then I'll sign the books for them as well. I did have a book launch for the first one. I got, you know, there were print on demand copies because it was mainly digital and audio, and I did book launch for that. But since that one, I haven't done any more book launches. Yeah, and then lockdown for 2 years, you couldn't do it. You couldn't even sign the books, you know. So
I know, difficult time, but you've maintained your success incredibly, and it's such an inspirational story. You know, it really is lovely to meet you today and actually hear it. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd add before we finish up that you might think that would be useful for anyone watching?
I would just say, don't give up. You know, a lot of what success that I had, a lot of it could be luck, could be timing. You still have to write the book. You still have to edit it. You know, so it is hard work. So like, don't be afraid of hard work, and don't give up. You might just have to renegotiate your goals and the focus that you have. But if you really want something, you know, keep after it. There's a quote I remember reading from Walt Disney. If you don't have a dream, how can you make your dream come true? So I use that, like, you know, in my life as well. Like, I had this dream, so I set goals and I focused on it and adapted to wherever I had to adapt. And I was dogged enough to keep after it. So I would just say, you know, have your dream and work towards it.
What a lovely way to finish the interview. I'm going to write that myself somewhere. And where is the best platform for people to follow you on social media?
Yeah, I have Facebook author page. I'm on Twitter. Tricia460. Don't ask me where that came from, but it was years ago I set that up, whenever Twitter started. And I have an Instagram account as well. So
okay. Is there one you prefer, or?
I love Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
I just find Instagram a safer place. I don't know why.
It's a kinder place.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe it's because I'm newer to it as well. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. Twitter is it's okay.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out that one as well. But I find it's good to be on all of them, and then you might find one or two you just spend more time on. But at least any, you know, people who are using the other ones can find you if they want to.
Yeah, I'm on all of them. I love Instagram myself. I can spend ages following influencers.
Yeah.
Again, an idea for a book of it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we look forward to, so it's book number 11. Is that The Guilty Girl?
Guilty Girl is coming out in June as an
June.
ebook, and The Buried Angels just out in paperback.
Buried Angels is out, yeah. Well, look, best of luck with it all, Patricia. Continued success, and I really appreciate your time here today, sharing such great advice with us.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Patricia. Take care.